Hello everyone, hi. My name is Jackie, I'm the founder of Kreativ, and today I'm going to be taking you step by step through a really fun painting. So I encourage you to make it your own. I'm looking forward to seeing all of your creative ideas. You can change the color of your bunny, you could add multiple bunnies, you could do maybe some eggs in the background instead of your circles, maybe some carrots. Make it your own and just have fun playing with that paint. If you don't have paint today, that is totally fine. You could be using crayons, markers, colored pencils, whatever you have. Today I'm going to be using acrylic paint, and I'm going to show you my setup first. So while our friends are joining us, I'm just going to talk a little bit and show you my supplies and how I would set up if I was at home. So I'm going to take this down. It might be a little rocky for a second. Just hang on. All right. All right. So I have a paper plate and I put my paint on my plate. So this is my palette. When I'm putting the paint on my palette, I want to think about the amount of paint or the amount of color I want to put on the plate. So I know I'm going to be using a lot of white in this painting. Let me just bring it over here. So I'm going to be using a lot of white, a little bit of brown. My background color I decided to use today is that pretty aqua or ocean breeze. So I put a pretty good amount of that. My dots are that turquoise. So I have a little bit of that because I don't have too many dots or polka dots on my background. I have some pink in my nose and my ears. So I just put a little bit of that. And I did a little bit of an outline with some black. So that is small as well. So my big colors were the white and the aqua. If you have your setup and if you have an easel, a tabletop easel, I have my canvas here, pretend that's blank, and I would put my paint right here, right underneath it, right in front of me. So we're just, come on in, get comfy. We're going to be getting started painting our bunny in just a few minutes, but I just wanted to share a setup and my supplies. So I have my palette of paint right underneath my easel, and I can turn my plate like a steering wheel for my paint to come right to me, and so I don't have to reach underneath. I also have, I'm right-handed, so I would put my paper towel to the right with my brushes on it, and this paper towel would be great to wipe my brushes off when I'm washing or when I'm changing colors. I also have my brushes here and my cup of water nice and close to me. And I would have maybe a plastic cloth, tablecloth, and I really like it. You don't have to have it, but I always put some paper. You could just take a paper bag and cut it open and unfold it. And that would be great for you to try things out, wash your brush or wipe your brush off on as well. So just kind of showing you my setup. If you have your canvas flat, I would just put it to the side. My palette to the side of it. I'm using Craft Smart acrylic paint today. Like I said, you could use watercolor on paper, you could use crayons, markers, colored pencils, whatever you have is perfect. I also have a few different size brushes. So I have a big brush for my big areas. I have my long brush. If you painted with me, you'd be very familiar with these brushes. This is a flat brush. It's pretty small. I have a little bit bigger of a brush. It's also flat. Like I said, you can use any brushes you have. Just different sizes are helpful. And I also have this little tiny guy. And we'll talk more about these brushes as we go. So when I'm using my paint and I want to wash my brush or I want to go to a different color, I would wipe off all the extra paint first, then I would give it a nice wash, and then I wipe again. What that's going to do, it's going to save my water from getting too dirty. It's going to save my brush from getting all blown out. I want to keep it as tight and flat as I can. So if I'm very nice to my brush and wipe on both flat sides and give it a nice wash, then I'm keeping my brush safe, and I'm also setting myself up to go to my next color. Sometimes I don't need to wash my brush. I could just wipe my brush off and go to my next one. So think about that. So also, let me just put you back up. All right, hi. Whenever I put water on my brush, I always make sure I dry it because I want to make sure I don't get drips. With acrylic paint, you don't need water to make it move. If I'm using watercolor, that's totally different. But with acrylic, I want to make sure my brush is nice and dry before I go up on my canvas or I'll get drips. So now that we kind of have our setup all set, I have my paint on my palette, I have my brushes, let's go ahead and talk about our canvas. So again, make this your own, add whatever details you'd like, and I can't wait to see what you guys come up with. All right, so as we've been painting and coloring these last few weeks, we've talked about really planning our picture before we actually put our brush on. So I'm going to use my finger and I'm going to create an arch, which is going to be the top of my bunny head. So if I were to continue this top of my head, if I were to go all the way off my canvas, it would become a circle. So keep that in mind when you are drawing it. You could do more of an oval or super round like a circle. Also, I want to keep in mind that however big I make that top of his head, that's going to determine how big my ears are, right? So I'm going to use my finger first to really plan out how big that arch is, the top of my head, so I can make sure I can fit my big ears in there as well. I'm going to be using a very light brown, so I'm going to be using white with just a little bit of brown to use as my kind of like my pencil mark. You could use, if you're going to do like a blue bunny, a purple bunny, you could just do a very light color of that, so like version of that. So whatever color you're using, purple, white, pink, white, whatever color, I'm going to use brown with a little bit of white. I'm going to get my paint on my brush. I'm going to be using this one here, this little flat guy, and let's use our imaginations just for a moment. Have you been ice skating, or have you seen maybe like a hockey or figure skating, right? You see their ice skates, right? They have a blade on the bottom. So we're going to pretend that the bottom of our brush is our ice skate. Let me just pick up a big one for you. All right, so here's the bottom of my ice skate and here's the toe that's in the shoe. When I'm gliding on that ice, I stand my brush right up on that ice and I just slide and glide. That's how I'm going to get a really nice thin controlled line. I'm going to use that whole bottom. One other trick with using a flat brush, once I dip it in, I wipe, because this is my plate, I wipe on both flat sides, and what that does is it compresses my bristles and it gets all the extra paint off. And then I can get a really nice thin line. So let me get my paint. I hope you're having a nice day. I have a little bit of white on there. I have a little bit of brown. I'm just going to give it a quick little mix, just so I have a really light brown on my brush. Now I'm going to wipe off the extra on the edge of my plate. That tightened up my ice skate, made it nice and sharp. All right, let's use our finger one more time. And I'm going to move in from the edge of my canvas. I'm going to move in a little bit. I'm going to then go up and over, and allowing there to be a little bit of space on the other side of my canvas. One more thing. Think about how your canvas is set up. I have it going the long way, just so I have enough room for my ears. But if you wanted to do a whole bunch of bunnies, maybe lined up, I would turn my canvas the long way, okay? So here we go. I'm going to make that arch one more time. Then I'm going to take a deep breath and add. And it's okay if you have multiple lines, because I'll just clean that right up. And there he is. All right, awesome. So I have that shape of the top of his head, and now I'm going to go ahead and use my finger to create the ear shape. I have this one is going right off the corner of my canvas, and I'm totally fine with that. If you really want your ears to stay on the canvas, really plan out where they're going. Use your finger. I'm going to start right at the top of my head, and I'm going to make that shape going up. It's almost like a leaf or a petal of a flower that shape, practice on your paper, practice with your finger, and then you can go ahead with your brush. So I'm just going to add a little bit more paint. I'm still using the same color I'm using as my body of my bunny, so I'm using that light brown, which is just white with brown. And I did mix it on my plate, so I have that little puddle, which I'm going to go back into. And now I'm going to use my finger. I'm just going to push you back a little bit. Hold on. All right, now you can see it. All right, so I'm going to start on this ear here, and I'm going to start the top, and I'm going to think about how far apart I want my ears to be. And I can make like a little dot, and I can say, well, I want this much space, and that kind of sets me up to know how far my ears are going to be apart. Now I'm going to start at this base point of my ear, and I'm going to use my finger and just practice making my ear. All right, see it, I practice. Now I'm going to go ahead and add my ear. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. If you need to make a little bit more of that light color, you sure can. I'm going to do the same thing on this side here. I'm going to start at that point that I decided was the distance between my ears. I'm going to go up. Yours can go off just like I did here, or it can stay right on your canvas. One more thing, a little trick I can show you is if you want it to be the same length, right? You can use your brush, or if you have a ruler or anything that's long, and measure. And now I know exactly how long my ear is, so I can go over on this side and I can say, all right, I want that end point to be right there. So now I have a start and an end point on this side here. Just a little trick. So you can use your brush as a mark maker and also as a ruler. All right, here we go. I'm going to make that shape again. Try with your finger, picture it. And end. And I'm going to do the same thing on this side here. Think about how wide it is. All right, cool. So I'm going to now draw the inside of each ear, which is just going to be pretty much the same shape as the ear, but just smaller and in the inside. So I'm just going to add my paint. I'm using that edge of the brush, that ice skate, instead of using the whole width of my brush, because by using that edge, I'm going to get a little bit of a thinner mark. So here we go. I'm going to start on this one here. I'm making the inside of my ear. And if you're using crayons or markers, doing the same thing. I'm going to do the same over here. All right, he's looking good. I'm going to add my nose, and I'm going to use the same color. So again, I'm going to picture where I want my nose to be. I'm going to create almost like a triangle, but my triangle is going to be a little bit rounded at the tip and on the corners. So I'm going to make a triangle for my nose, and I'm going to place it where I want it to be. It can be higher, it can be lower, wherever you think your bunny nose should be. So I'm going to say mine's going to be kind of in the middle-ish of my face. I'm going to do, draw it with my finger first. It's going to be a flat top. It's going to be like a triangle, but it's rounded. You could do yours however you'd like. So I'm going to start with my top line. That's going to determine how big it is, right? So I'm going to say, is that long enough? Is that too small? Should I make it bigger? Maybe a little bit. Now I'm going to curve those edges, and I'm going to make my little nose, and there it is. So I'm using acrylic paint, and acrylic paint dries really fast, and what's great about that is that I can always add layers of color on top of it. So if I was like, ooh, I'm not too happy about that shape, or I want to make it bigger or smaller, you could let it dry and then paint over it, or you could take a little bit of a piece of a paper towel and just wipe it out, let it dry, and then paint on top of it. If you were to just start piling paint on top, think of it as like laying a whole bunch of band-aids on top of each other. You would really notice that. So if I take that paint off and then paint on top of it, or if I let it dry and paint on top of it, then that would be fine. So here we go. I have my nose on, my ears are great. I'm gonna add my eyes later. Now I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna start filling in my bunny. I'm gonna pick up a little bit bigger of a brush. I'm gonna do my white grip if you've been painting with me before. So it's about this big. Anything, any brush is great. You just want, when you're painting, to think about the size of the canvas, the size of the part of the painting you're working on to the size of your brush. So I wouldn't want to use a detail brush because that would take days to fill in. So I'm using this guy here. I'm going to be dipping into my white. I'm also going to be dipping into my brown. I have both colors on my brush and I'm going to allow them to kind of mix in, marble right on my canvas. I'm going to welcome that. You could mix your color on your plate if you'd like. So I'm going to start, and now I'm kind of seeing if I want to go lighter or if I want to go darker, which means I would add just more brown or more white. I'm going to kind of play with my brush stroke. I'm going to keep it kind of going in this arched way. You could do it however you like. You could do a multicolored bunny. Just going to start filling this in. And I would have to dip a whole bunch of times because this is a pretty big space. But take your time. Like I said, if you wanted to do a different color, you don't have to do a brown bunny. Maybe start thinking about your background. Do you want to do polka dots? Do you want to do carrots? Do you want to do hearts? Do you want to do eggs? Whatever you would like. All right, and now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start filling in this part of my ear, keeping that center part. I'm going to keep that white because I'm going to do that pink. Maybe you want to do a different color for your ears. Let's do our bunny. All right. So when I'm painting, I kind of think about the direction of my brush stroke, like what am I painting? I'm painting my ear, which are long, so I'm doing long brush strokes that go right along with the shape of my ears. I'm using the whole width of my brush when I have big areas. I turn my brush, I use that ice skate when I have a little bit of like a small area or if I need to get a nice sharp line. I'm going to go ahead on my other side. And this is where I can kind of redefine, or if I want to add any like thickness to an ear or change it at all, this is where I can definitely go ahead and do that. Just smoothing out some lumps of paint I have on there. All right. If you want to take this like a step further and add a little bit more of the color you're using and maybe add some darker edges here and there wherever you think they're needed. you can definitely do that. I'm just adding some to these bottom edges over here. Maybe on the side of my ear. I'm painting in that wet paint. And of course, I always can add a little bit more of that white. All right, cool. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to wipe off my brush. I'm going to wipe my brush, and then I'm going to add some pink to my ears and the inside of my nose. Now I have some tiny little corners right up in the tips of my ears, and also my nose is a little bit smaller, so I may use my a little bit of a smaller brush. But I'm just going to give this guy a wash because I might use him, and I'm also going to pick up my long brush, which is a little bit smaller. If you want to do a different color for your ears and nose, feel free. Wipe, wash, wipe. And I'm going to start with my big brush, and I'm going to get all the bigger areas of my nose and my ears, and then I'll switch to my smaller brush to get into those little nooks and crannies. So I'm going to start right up in here. And if your ears are still wet, you just keep in mind that you don't want to pull that color into your ears, into the center of your ears. So just be aware of that wet edge. And you can get as bright or as light as you want, or as intense as you'd like. So more pure pink would be nice and bright. Adding some white would soften it. You could really play with that. You could do more a lighter edge, a darker center. Just kind of play with your paint. See what happens. I'm going to do the same thing over here. And just taking my time. I've loved seeing all of your artwork. Thank you so much for sending it to me. You guys are fabulous artists. I love painting and drawing with you. All right, so I was able to use this brush the whole time, and I got in all those nooks and crannies. If you want to pick up a smaller brush at any time, feel free. Always think about the size of your brush to what you're painting. I'm going to focus on my nose now. I'm going to go back down here. I'm going to fill this in. I'm going to add an outline to this painting later, so that will also help make things pop. And if you've noticed, when you let your paint dry and you do a second coat, you can make things, you can add some detail by doing a second layer. So your mark is not your final mark. You always can go back on top of it. All right. So I have all of my bunnies base coat down. I'm going to give my brush a nice wipe wash. I'm going to be using this one. I could also pick up my big one if I'd like, but I'm probably going to use a combo. So I'll probably use my big brush and this one to do my background. I'm going to fill in the whole background, and then I'm going to go ahead and add my polka dots later. But this is where you should really start thinking about what you want to do for your background. If you wanted to do add flowers, think about what color background you want to use to go along with whatever you're going to decorate your background with. I'm going to use this pretty, it's called Ocean Breeze, or like an aqua color, but of course you can use whatever you'd like. So I'm just going to give my brush a quick little wash, and then we'll start up there. Wipe, wash, wipe. All right. So I have my big brush for all my big areas, and then where I'm getting close to my bunny, I'm going to switch over to this one, just so I can have a little bit more control. When I'm filling in my background, sometimes you think like, maybe I'll just outline the whole thing and then fill it in. I find that if I do that, I can see that outline. Once that outline dries and I then fill it all in. So what I like to do is I like to work in small little sections. So I outline a little bit, then I fill in and I outline a little bit more. One more thing to think about is the direction of your brush stroke. Do you want to go all over, or do you want to keep it going up and down or right to left? So think about that before you go up on your canvas. I'm going to be using that Ocean Breeze, but you could maybe use a combo of your what color and some white, whatever background color you would like, go for it. So I'm going to start with this brush here, my white grip. I'm going to dip on into my background color, and like I was saying, I like to work in small sections. So I outline a little. Think about how your brush is on that canvas. Then I go ahead. I decided I want to go up and down with my brush stroke for my background. I'm putting plenty of paint on there. I don't want drips, but I want to make it easy to fill in my background, move that paint. So I'm just going up the side of my ear, and now I'm going to fill in. When you're painting also, I see sometimes people like scrubbing the brush on the canvas. Think of it more as like petting a puppy. So you're gonna pet your puppy like this, right? Rather than scrub it. That kind of helps when I'm painting. You want to go up and down, nice and gentle, rather than scrub. All right. Continuing on. Get in these little nooks and crannies. If I need a smaller brush, I could grab that. I did go over my ear just a little bit over there, but that's okay because I'm going to add my outline in a little bit, and that will cover that. Just going to switch over here. Hi everyone, thanks for joining. I hope you're having a nice day. I think the sun's kind of coming out. I need some sunshine. I need it. So this is where I could pick up my bigger brush if I needed to fill in my big areas that are between these ears. But I'm enjoying using my white grip brush, so I'm just going to stick to this. And I'm keeping that brush stroke going the same direction. You could do a multicolored background. You could do like a tie-dye bunny. That'd be kind of cool. So I just outline in small areas. And then I fill in. If you're painting the sides of your canvas, you can go ahead and do that with this background color. You can always turn your canvas or your piece of paper. It doesn't have to stay stuck on your easel or flat on your tabletop. It's helpful to turn your canvas, so don't be afraid to do that. I'm just going in, sweeping up any like little piles of paint or smoothing out any spots I missed. All right, so I'm just gonna let that dry for a little bit, but I'm going to go focus on adding any second coats onto my bunny's face. I think I'm gonna go a little bit darker in the inside of my ears. So I'm going to just give my brush a quick little wash wipe. We're gonna let our background dry. We're gonna start thinking about what we wanna add to our background. If you do have a blow dryer, hair dryer, that's a great tool to use to help your paint dry a little faster, but it should just take a few minutes. So I'm just gonna give my brush a quick little wash, and I think I'm gonna add a little bit more of a dark pink or just pink to the center of my ears just to darken that up. And I'm going to add maybe a second coat to my nose. So let me grab my long brush. I'm gonna clean off this brush here. So I have my nice clean brush, and I'm going to just start maybe adding a little bit of the same shape, just in the middle here, just darkening up that. I have a little bit of that light on the edge. This is just making it look as though my ears, the bunny ears are kind of deep, right? So I'm just creating a little bit of depth by adding a little bit more, a little darker color right there. And I'm just gonna give my nose a second coat. If your bunny needs a second coat as well, feel free to do that now. I am going to start adding my little mouth. I'm gonna outline my nose. I am gonna wait for my whiskers last, because I want to make sure I want to make sure my background is all done before I put my whiskers right on there. But I have all those pinks in there. I like the way my bunny's fur looks. I'm going to go ahead and grab my detail brush, and I'm going to be using black paint. You could probably, if you wanted to, use a different color, like pink for the mouth or red for the mouth. If you wanted to add a different color eyes, brown eyes, or just start thinking about your eyes as well. Do you want to do your bunny winking? Do you want to have eyelashes on your bunny? Do you want to have big eyes on your bunny, or just little tiny ones like I have here? So start thinking about that, and definitely practice on your paper if you have some paper with you before you go up on your canvas. So I'm just going to go grab my detail brush. Now with my detail brush, I like to hold it nice and low like a pen or a pencil. Another little trick with this guy is once I dip my brush into the paint, instead of wiping my brush, I roll it. So think about sharpening a pencil. So I'm going to put that tip right on the edge, and I just roll it right on my plate. What that's going to do, it's going to get all the extra paint off, really tighten up my bristles, like I have a really sharp point to my pencil. So I have the black on there, I rolled it, I'm holding like a pen or a pencil, and now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add my little mouth to my bunny. My mouth has a center line that goes from my nose, it goes down, and then I'm going to do a curve on one side and a curve on the other side. You could do yours a little bit different if you'd like. Maybe your bunny has two little teeth poking out. Hi, Auntie Pat. And just start thinking about how you'd like your mouth to be. And I'm going to start putting my mouth on my bunny. So I have my black on my detail brush. I rolled it on its side. It's nice and pointy, and I'm going to go ahead on my canvas. So I'm going to find the bottom tip of my nose, and I'm going to draw my line down, and then I'm going to add my little smile for my mouth. So I'm going to start by using my finger, finding that center middle of my nose, using just the tips of those bristles, barely let it touch. Don't let those bristles bend. And I'm going to go ahead and add the mouth. I'm going to bend down. If your canvas, if your bunny's little face is dry, you could put your hand down, or you could use your finger as like a kickstand. But just be careful if your painting is not dry and if you put your hand down, because you will smudge. So I have one. Don't overthink it, just get it in. 2, and I think I might add some little teeth on mine. I think I might. I'm gonna let that dry, but we'll just leave that there for now. And I'm going to outline my nose. So try not to bend those bristles, just using the tips. If your paint is really wet, it may mix a little bit. So if you want to wait, you sure can. I'm gonna go back down. So you wanna make sure you're comfy when you're painting, right? So turn your canvas, hold it on your lap if you need to, or lay it flat. If you don't have black paint, or if you want to use a Sharpie instead, just wait for your paint to be very, very dry, and then you can go ahead and use that. And you're going to notice when you're using your detail brush that you dip quite a bit, right? So make sure you're dipping and rolling your brush. All right, so I'm going to add my little eyeballs. I'm going to turn my brush around and use the back end. I'm dipping on into the black. I'm going to really picture where I want those eyes to be. And I kind of have them, if I find the top corners, if I just kind of go up on a diagonal, that's the placement of mine. But of course you can, you know, put them wherever you like. You also can change their eyes. You can have them winking. You can have big circles for eyes. You can do whatever you'd like. So I'm going to add one here. This is just get myself started. And I'm going to do another one right here. And now I can go ahead and make them a little bit bigger. If you have a Q-tip, you could always use a Q-tip too. It's kind of fun. Or the back of your brush. Cute. All right, nice. While I'm here, I'm going to add the outline to the inside of my ears. I can continue to let my background dry before I add that outline. If you'd like to use a different brush, a bigger brush, like my long brush, my long flat brush, that would be a great one to outline with as well. I think I'm going to do that. I'm going to go grab my long brush. Now, if you're outlining with your long brush, you really want to use it like an ice skate. So using that edge of your brush. I am going to dip on into my black paint, wiping on both flat sides, compressing those bristles if you're using a flat brush. And I'm going to go ahead and outline. You could do this in like a dark brown. If you have a brown bunny, if you have a purple bunny, you could do it in pure purple. It doesn't have to be black. I'm doing it in black because I just want it to be a little bit more poppy. All right. So I'm just going to wash off my brush because I'm just going to let that be for now. And I'm going to start focusing on my background in just a moment. So just make sure your brushes are nice and clean, and we'll start in just a moment. All right, so I am going to be doing my polka dots on my bunny. Like I said, you could do carrots, you could do flowers, you could do hearts, you could do whatever you'd like. So really think about that. Practice on a separate piece of paper or with your finger before you go up on your canvas. I am now going to use my long brush and I'm going to make some polka dots or some circles. So I have my turquoise. I'm going to load that up on my brush. I'm going to wipe on both flat sides before I go up on my canvas. And I'm going to play with the placement of these circles. I have a few that are half off my canvas, which makes you think, well, what's beyond the edge of my canvas? There may be another bunny or more dots, right? So think about that. Think about the placement. Think about the size. I'm going to put my brush down and I'm going to wiggle out in a circular motion until I get a dot that I'm happy with. Now, once I outline that with black, it will really pop. So I'm just going to get all my dots in and then I'll go ahead and outline. So all my polka dots, you could do multiple colored polka dots. You could do, I think it'd be cute to see a whole bunch of little carrots. You could do different size dots. Put a whole dot here. You could add white to whatever color you're using. You could mix your colors. You could do a rainbow. I'm going to add a few more. And I like that so far. He's cute. All right, so continue on if you're going to add any more details. Feel free to add anything else to your background, but I'm going to just start adding some outline to my bunny. You could use your detail brush if you'd like, or a little bit bigger of a brush. Just be aware of the edge. You also can use a Sharpie if your background is super dry. You could use just a darker version of your bunny. If I did a light brown bunny, I could use pure brown. That might be nice. All right, I'm gonna go down again. Like I said, you want to be comfortable when you're painting, so if you have to move your canvas, almost done outlining his ears. There he is. Okay. All right. So I have a few more things to do. I'm going to outline my polka dots, which are really going to make those pop. I'm also going to add my whiskers. When I'm adding my whiskers, I really want to slow it down. I'm going to be using my detail brush and I'm going to go super slow when I'm drawing these. Sometimes you get excited and you do them really fast, and that's when you can get like a really big one or just something that you don't like. Of course, there are no mistakes in art, but if you slow things down, it helps. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab my detail. And I'm going to show you a little trick. All right, so If you want your paint to move, if your paint's getting a little dry, I scoop up a little bit of whatever color I have, and I'm going to put it somewhere on my plate. Let me show you over here. I'm just going to put a little bit right here. Now, we've talked about not getting drips on our canvas with our paint, but we are going to add a drop of water into this little pile of paint I have right here. So I'm going to take my detail brush, I'm going to dip them on into the water, and now I'm going to put my brush directly into my paint. So we usually don't do that, but in this case, I really want my paint to move, and this is going to help. So I'm mixing that tiny little drop of water right on into my paint. I'm going to roll. Now I'm going to plan out how I want those to bend in the placement of those whiskers as well. Sometimes I like to hold my brush a little further back than if I were doing something super detailed and tiny. This is a little bit bigger, so I'm going to pull my hand back a little bit on my brush. I'm going to really picture how I want them, and then I'm going to go ahead with my brush. So I'm using that tiny little puddle of paint that we just created. I'm going to kneel down again just one more time, just so I can get my whiskers where I want them, holding my brush a little bit further, still using just the tips of my bristles. I'm going to add, and I still didn't get a solid line, but that's fine because I can just go back and clean that up. I'm going to do another one. Using the tips of your bristles, barely putting any pressure. The more pressure you put on your brush, the bigger the mark. So I'm trying to keep it nice and light. So now I'm going to clean up some of these whiskers. I added a little bit more paint. I can use my finger as like a kickstand. And I can clean up those whiskers. Now, at this time, I'm going to start adding some outlines to my circles. You could do a different color. I'm going to stick with black, but of course you could add whatever you'd like. Maybe white would be cool. Whatever you like. Slowing it down, really practicing using just the tips of your bristles. And it's really helpful to be comfortable. I probably, if I was painting, I'd probably put this on hold it on my lap or hold it flat on my table to do my outlines. Just to have a little bit more control. And if you have long sleeves, make sure you roll those sleeves up. All right, 2 more to go. So if you're like, you know, I want to add something, and you can definitely add whatever you'd like to your canvas. Just be patient with letting whatever's underneath it dry completely, just so it really pops. And you don't get just some mud. awesome. So I hope you had fun painting with me today. Add any other details you'd like. Take your time, really, add whatever you'd like to your picture. And sign or initial wherever makes you happy. I like to sign in my bottom right hand corner. Isn't it cute, Laura? It's so happy. And maybe do a few different versions of this bunny, have different colors and hang them all, like maybe 3 of them in a row. I think that would be super cute. You could write Happy Easter or Happy Spring on it. Just allow your background to dry. But I think he's super cute, and I had a lot of fun painting with you today. If you painted along, if you'd like to just post a picture of your painting or send it to me in a message, I'd love to see what you've done. Just thank you so much, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. I will see you soon. Bye-bye.